Earlier this week, Iran tested a medium-range ballistic missile, and as of yesterday, they're now on notice. Here is National Security Advisor Michael Flynn to lay out the case. This is the National Security Advisor who didn't run a right-wing media rag.
And an attack against a Saudi naval vessel conducted by Iran-supported Houthi militants underscore what should have been clear to the international community all along about Iran's destabilizing behavior across the entire Middle East. The recent ballistic missile launch is also in defiance of UN Security Council Resolution 2231. President Trump has severely criticized the various agreements reached between Iran and the Obama administration, as well as the United Nations, as being weak and ineffective. Instead of being thankful to the United States in these agreements, Iran is now feeling emboldened. As of today, we are officially putting Iran on notice. Thank you.
In that original track, you might not have been able to hear the music in the background, but it sounded like
He's gone?
That's not it. The war drums. Because although we wisely chose Barack Obama over John McCain, a man who talked about bomb Iran. Remember, we were worried about going to war with Iran? Well, we might be doing it again. It just took almost a decade. We were able to postpone it for a bit, but we might now do it. We're going to give you more details on whether this ballistic missile test actually violated 2231 or not. But yeah, as we were watching the video, that's what she said. We're going to war.
Yeah, so when Donald Trump had first nominated Flynn, I said we're going to go to war with Iran, and some people got mad because they're like, that's speculation, you have no idea. But the reason why I made that statement is, yes, it's a guess, but it's an educated guess based on what Flynn's priorities have been, what his statements have been in regard to Iran, and he's been very clear about the fact that he feels that there should be some military involvement in Iran, which, by the way, would be a complete and utter disaster. Now, the intel that they have and the messaging that they're putting out there is false, and you're gonna clear all that up in just a second. But I just want to state, if you think invading Iraq was a bad idea, if you think that preemptive war was a bad idea, this would be much worse, considering the fact that Iran's military capability is much stronger than Iraq's was. Yeah. So it would be a nightmare if we invaded Iran. But it seems like the Trump administration is dead set on heading in that direction. We'll see what happens. But what's the reality of Iran's testing?
Yeah, so some of what they said was sort of true, and we're going to get to that. Some of it was 100% false. We'll get to that as well. But first, the actual test. The United States deemed the launch to be a failure after the missile flew more than 500 miles before crashing. Now, whether that's actually a failure or not is not as cut and dried as, oh, it crashed. Missiles frequently crash after successful tests because what you're testing is not your ability to successfully land a missile. Missiles don't typically come in for a nice smooth landing on an aircraft carrier. It did fly for 500 miles, which might have well been what they were looking for. So we say it was a failure. They say it was successful. But we do have Donald Trump. This is yesterday tweeting this. I believe it was yesterday. Iran has been formally put on notice for firing a ballistic missile. Should have been thankful for the terrible deal the U.S. made with them. There he is alluding to the Iranian nuclear materials deal that Barack Obama was able to get in conjunction with former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, which will probably be shredded very soon. He also said Iran was on its last legs and ready to collapse until the U.S. came along and gave it a lifeline in the form of the Iran deal, $150 billion. Well, technically, we gave back approximately $150 billion that we had frozen for a couple of decades, and in return took the vast majority of their capability to produce nuclear weapons, which, if we had not done, by now they might well have. That section is left out. Also, the citations to Iran being on its last legs. No actual evidence provided, he's just saying it. There was a response by the Iranian government, though, to these provocative moves by Michael Flynn and our new president. This is a former Iranian foreign minister and an advisor to the president of Iran, who said, "This is not the first time that an inexperienced person has threatened Iran. The American government will understand that threatening Iran is useless. Iran does not need permission from any country to defend itself." And goes on to say, the missiles that were tested are not part of the nuclear accords. Iran will never use missiles produced in Iran to attack any other country. Well, yes. But of course they're going to say that sort of thing. Now, is there actually any veracity to what they're saying? So what everybody's referring to is UN Resolution 2231, which was passed shortly after the Iranian nuclear accords. calls upon Iran not to undertake any activity related to ballistic missiles designed to be capable of delivering nuclear weapons, including launches using such ballistic missile technology. So now you have a fight between Iran and the U.S. government as to whether this is actually a violation of that. Now, they have previously, in the past couple of years, tested ballistic missiles technology. The Obama administration said that they are violating sort of the spirit of the agreement, but not the actual word of the agreement, because so far as we've seen, and I've done research, these missiles are not capable of carrying nuclear weapons, although the testing that they're doing might be applied to others. And so is this a violation? It certainly seems to violate the spirit of the deal, but I don't know that it's cut and dry that they have now committed an act of war.
Right. Well, it doesn't even matter because Trump's interpretation is that this is a call for war, and they have to be careful. They can't do anything even remotely provocative because that will be used as any excuse for military action against Iran, and that would be a complete and utter disaster.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if my advice is something that Iran would ever hear or even consider, but I'm just worried that any type of testing they do, any type of provocative move they make will have negative ramifications for foreign policy.
And look, what we're seeing right now basically is the beginnings of a split between one way of dealing with a country like Iran and another way of dealing with them. Under Barack Obama, you attempted where you could to draw Iran more closely into the sort of, when I say League of Nations, I don't mean the formal capitalized League of Nations, but just the League of Nations that we have in Earth's civilization. You try to get them more closely tied to other countries through ties of economics, if possible. And that's what a lot of Iranians want. There's a burgeoning middle class in Iran that does not want to be isolated from Europe and the rest of the Western world. They want access to those products. And it is a very slow thing to turn a former enemy into an ally, or I should say a former ally, then enemy, back into an ally. But it is possible. One way that you probably don't do it is by starting a series of brinksmanship maneuvers with them that will almost certainly lead to more investment into their military. Because if you're threatening to invade them, yeah, they're going to want to build more tools to defend themselves. We can turn Iran into another North Korea if we want. If we want to box them in and turn them into a completely isolated, internationally isolated country, we can do that. I don't see how that's possibly in America's national interests.
Let's go take on the corporate media. Come join us, be a member, and change the media. tytnetwork.com/join.